Last week I showed you how you can make some scent stone using an eco resin. I used Aqua and perlite, which was a mineral based compound that you can put into your soil for gardening. It improves the aeration and the drainage, but it's also really good for making this lighter and more absorbent. And we're going to put some scent on the back of this, an oil-based scent, essential oil, candle oil, soap oil, whatever. And if you do that, you should not be putting this on any kind of a surface, especially not a wooden varnished surface or even laminate plastic. The oil can eat into the surface. So I'm going to make a coaster that this can sit on. This round coaster is just the perfect size, and I'm going to make the coaster out of Aqua, and then I can put some wax on it, and that will help to protect it. And you can replenish the wax, but it will just save the surface of whatever you happen to have this scent stone sitting on. So I'm going to guess how much this needs, and I'm going to say it's somewhere around, well, I'll make up 150. I've got a couple of other molds I can actually add some extra bits into. So I'm placing my cup on my scales and turn them on, and they should zero. I'm measuring in grams, so I'm going to put 150 grams of powder into my pot. Almost there. There we go. Okay, so I've now got a new pot on here and I've zeroed it. I need 35 grams of water for every 100 grams, and I've got 150, so half of 35 is 1750. I'm going to round it down because I'm going to be doing a marbling technique, so I don't want this to be too wet. So that's 17 plus 35, 52. So I want 52 grams of water. That will do. Right, I like to add my powder to my water. So just do that a little bit at a time. See, it mixes in really nicely. Just want to make sure you haven't got any lumps. And try not to mix too much air in, so don't whisk it. Right. Now, Aqua comes up a little bit thicker than I find Resin-Crete does, but it doesn't seem to make any difference in terms of the pour. I don't find that I get too many bubbles. Okay, just make sure that there are no lumps left in here. So I'm kind of squashing it against the side of the cup. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Right, so this is just a pigment that I made just using some acrylic paint. I think I put a little bit of acrylic ink in there as well. So I'm just using a green. We'll see how that goes. So put some drops in there and just give it a sort of quick stir. That's about all I'm doing. And then I'm going to put it in my mould. I'll pour it round the edge first. You can see it is really quite thick. And I'm going to sugar that and tap it. I just have a micro brush stick now, and I'm just going to run around the edges. And then I'll sugar that again. And then I'm going to top that up now. I think that's probably going to be okay. So I have quite a bit left here, so I'll put that in my overspill mould. And now I just need to leave this to set for about an hour. Right, this has now completely set. So I'm going to demold them. Oh, I got some bubbles there, which is unfortunate, but not a problem. And this was the overpour. I just mixed up a tiny bit more because I have 2 roses anyway, so I needed 2 coasters. And there we go. This one's still a little bit wet. That's fine. Needs to dry off. Got a bubble there. That's not too much of a problem on the edge because I'm actually going to create some leaves now to decorate these. And the roses will be able to sit in the centres. And I'm just going to put some leaves on there, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that in a moment. Right, and in order to make my leaves, I'm going to use some Das air dry clay, and I have this mould. It's by Katy Sue. It's the Hellebore Christmas Rose, and it has these leaves here. So I'm just going to use these 2 smaller ones. I think that one's a little bit too big. So I'm just going to condition my clay by squeezing it between my fingers until it's soft and malleable. Doesn't take that long. And then I'll get my mould out. In this pot I have some, it's just the scraps of the air dry clay that you put in here, and you mix it with water to make a slip. So it's a paste, and that's going to help me to do any sticking on. So I'm just going to take a small piece of the clay and try putting it in here. I've not used this mould before, or any of this types of moulds with the clay, but don't see why it wouldn't work. So just push that in. I don't want them to be too thin, so I'll see what that looks like when I get it out of the mould. Is it going to come out of the mould? Yes, rather nicely actually. So I think that's lovely. So I'm going to put a tiny bit of the clay the slip rather, behind the leaf, and lay that down. I'm going to let that dry in place. So I'm going to carry on making some leaves and arranging them on here. I'm just squeezing them in, oops, and taking off the excess. And just pushing them in. Won't matter too much what the back looks like because they're literally going to be stuck to the coaster. I'm just flexing the mould until the leaf pops out. So a little bit of slip on the back. And rearrange that leaf. While I'm doing this, this is my spare piece of clay. I'm just going to wrap that in. I've got a baby wipe here. So I'm just going to wrap the baby wipe around it while I'm not using it so that it doesn't become too dry. And I realise that the clay is almost the same colour as the mould, so it's not the easiest thing to demonstrate, but that's a little bit too much in there. Let's take some of that off. Literally just scraping it off with my finger, or my thumb in that case. And then it might have been a little too much. Popping it out of the mould. It's rather pretty. More slip. Now, if you have your rose to hand, you can make sure that you're not going to be putting the leaves underneath the rose. You do want that to still be able to sit, so I've got a sort of about a centimetre ring around it that I can actually put some of the leaves in. And again, I may not fill all of this. I'm just going to cover up the worst of the actual bubbles. These bubbles on the surface here, so I can actually take some slip, oops, take it off my fingers, and fill those in. Let's get some over there. There's a hole there. Let's fill that one in. Right, and I'll let that completely dry. You can sand off any lumps or anything that's left over. So I don't know if you can still see the holes in profile, but you can colour match afterwards. So and they're barely noticeable from a distance. So I'm carrying on putting the leaves down, and I will show you what that looks like once I've got some more down. Okay, so I've rearranged a few of the leaves now, and I've curled them over the edges. And I think that's enough. So I need to leave these to completely dry, then I can paint them, and then this whole thing just needs a wax. And that will be ready to gift, to just wrap up and gift to somebody. So I will put a felt pad on the bottom, or you can use cork. So I'm going to leave this to dry, and then I'll show you what to do when it's ready for painting. In the meantime, I'm just going to carry on and do this one, and I will show you that at the end. Okay, to decorate my angel wings, I've got some crystals. You can either use a dropper or anything you like, really. These ones happen to be hearts. And I need some jump rings. I've got this size, which looks quite large, and that will be fine for the top. So I can literally open, and you open a jump ring by twisting it sideways, large enough for you to hook it through. And this is quite thick, so you do need to have a large jump ring, and then you twist it back again. And I like to put a small dot of glue or resin just to hold that closed, and I will do that in a little bit. So that one is fine for the top. You can see you have got some room. I can put my ribbon through there, but there's no way that that's going to fit through this area here. I don't have any larger jump rings. I've got some wire though, so I'm going to make my own. And I just have a toothbrush. I have a paintbrush, and I'm going to make a large jump ring. So I'm going to wind this round a couple of times, because I might as well make a few while I'm at it. Try and get them as neat as possible. A little bit wonky. And then I'm going to slide those off. And then I will take my snippers, and I'm going to snip through my wire, all in the same place. So let's get that one out of the way. And then if I snip there, come on, snip please. That's one jump ring. Just put it back into place. That's a large jump ring. And I can cut some more here. Put that back into place. And I've got one more. Now if you rotate this round to where your cut ends and snip there, you end up with a whole jump ring. There we go. So that's 3 jump rings there. Let me move these out of the way. Sorry for the banging. Okay, so now I can just rotate that apart and slip that through the hole and push it through. And again, I will bond that with a little bit of resin. And that looks like it's a big enough jump ring. So let me open it again, just a little tiny bit. Don't pull apart, always twist. And then I'm going to put my little heart on the bottom and twist that back closed again. And there we go. Now you can elongate your jump rings, you can squash them if you don't like them sticking out like that, but I think that actually looks okay once it's hanging. So now I just need to put a ribbon on the top. So I'm going to go ahead and grab some ribbon. Okay, I have a piece of this sheer organza ribbon, and I'm just going to cut a point on the end there. And then I can pass it through my top ring, my top jump ring, and just tie a knot in the top. And slide that up. And there we go. I think that's quite a pretty little gift. If you have a small pendant heart mold or something, you could probably make a little bit of a bigger heart and maybe put the initial of the person that you're giving it to. But I think that's okay, so I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to make a box for this, and I've designed a box. I will leave a link to the file in my description box below. I will show you how to upload it to Cricut Design Space and find out how to cut that out, and then I'll be back here and I'll show you how to put it together. I'm in Design Space. I'm going to upload, so I'll click that and click upload image. You can click browse and go to where you've downloaded the file and open that, or you can just drag and drop it from an open folder on your desktop, which is what I've done. So it appears in the box. You click continue, and here's where you can make sure that you give it a name. You can give it tags, you can put it in a group if you want, or a collection. I'm going to click upload. It's on my canvas. Now I'm going to go over to the layers and click ungroup. I'll click off, I'll click the top layer, and I'm going to ungroup that, and I'll click off. I'm clicking the top of the layer palette, and I'm going to change the function from basic cut to score. This assumes that you have an explore or a maker, or maker 3 or explore 3. That will give you the score facility. If you have the Joy Extra, scoring will not be available to you. Doesn't mean you can't score. If you go over to the function and change it to foil and put your foil tip in, it will act like it's scoring. It will ask you to put the foil, it will ask you to move the star wheels away. Don't worry about any of that. Just put the tip in and hit go, and it will score. I'm changing back to maker, so I'll change that back to score. Then I'm going to select the blue box layer, hold my shift key down and select the score above it and click attach. Now I can move those out of the way. I'm going to go up to rotate, which is just above it, and turn that to 90 degrees. This will turn it on its side, and that allows you to cut more on a sheet acetate. So now I'm clicking on the canvas, and I'm going to change the other score lines. So again, going to the function, change to score. Now I'm holding the shift key and selecting the bottom layer. And again, I'm going to attach that. And that now is ready to go ahead and make. Okay, so I have my pieces cut by my Cricut, and the score lines have been put in there, and the acetate piece. So I'm going to make the bottom of the box first. So obviously I'm using this piece of paper because it's just very obvious to show you what I'm doing with it. So you're needing to fold now all of the pieces into each other. There is a PDF in the file that I've linked below, and it does show you the score lines on a diagram and written instructions as well. And it does say that one of the lines, I've marked one of the score lines in red. That's this top score line here. That's the only line that needs to be folded in the opposite direction. So everything folds in apart from this line, and that folds back out. So you should end up with that. Now I'm going to use bookbinding glue for bonding this. You can use something like the Beacon 3-in-1. It's the crystal clear. It's meant for for cartons and boxes and all kinds of things. I would not recommend using tape. It's easier with glue because it does give you a little bit more bonding time, but also tape is an instant grab. If you haven't got it lined up, then that's it. Life's difficult for you enough already. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue here on the table because this is not working anymore. So right, I'm going to smooth some on. Don't put too much, otherwise it will leak everywhere and then you're going to get yourself in a pickle. So literally going to line up the edges until I get a square side. I'm just pinching those together, not for very long, 10 seconds or so. Just make sure it has a good grip. Just press it. That's fine. Let's do the same to this side. Gives you just long enough to slip and slide it into position, but you haven't got to stand around forever holding it so that it bonds. There you go. Hold that together. Lining up the edges. And do the same for the other side. And the last one. I'm just going to tuck that in, pick up a little glue and apply it. I'm just using my resin stirring stick here to apply the glue. Hold that together. And that's done. This cardstock is, it's probably about 280 maybe. I wouldn't go any lower than 240. You do want some sturdiness. Okay, that's done. I'm just going to fold that one back for a minute. You can see on the inside. So now I'm going to apply a little bit of glue to the inside tabs here. And I will tuck that in. And the same with that one. I'm going to hold that in a second. Apply the glue. And pinch those in. And then I'll do the same for this one. And pinch that in. Now there's no need to apply any glue for this side. This side just tucks in and that tucks down to form a slope. And that's it, that's your box done. Then we can deal with the acetate lid. I'm going to use super glue to bond this. And in the same way, you can see whichever way your scores, you want to flip it back over and fold away from the scores. So I used the scoring tool on my maker. Let me just show you what that is. I used one of these on my maker. because it has a sharper point. It may be, if you're using the Cricut Joy and you've had to use a foil tool, as I explained in the video, that you might need to go over it with a pen or some kind of foiling, not foiling tool, scoring device, because it may not score enough on the acetate. But it's simple lines. It literally is from points to points, so you can draw them in if you need to. Right, so I'm just folding all of these around, and it should fold down the line quite happily. Just the last ones to do. And that last one as well. Okay. So these end panels will tuck, they're the last ones to fold over. Now the easiest way to do this is to actually put your wrap around your box. So let me just pull these tabs out and wrap it around my box. Stand it down. And I can pull this tab back, and now I just need, sorry, not enough hands here. I literally need 2 dots of glue, of the super glue. That's all you need for that. And fold it back down and just hold it in place. Try and put it in the middle of the tab and really don't use very much, because otherwise you'll end up gluing it to your box. So just hold that for a few seconds, flip that over and do the same for the other end. Just fold that back a minute. Okay, and then fold that down, hold that in place. Just try and put that lid on. I think that's it, and that should slide off. And there's your box, and there's your acetate lid, and it's a pretty close fit, but it does fit. So now we can put you might want to put some crinkle in there, some shred, whatever you want to put in there, bit of tissue paper, and then put your lid back on. And I think that makes a really nice gift. If you give them a bottle of essential oil with it as well, fantastic. If not, just provide a little card, and I'll show you a sample of that at the end with some care instructions on it. So in the meantime, let's go back to the coasters. Okay, so these leaves are all dry now, and I'm ready to start painting. So I've just got a little bit of excess slip sticking out from under there, so I'm just scraping that off with my nail. And apparently I'm scraping off my nail varnish too. I cannot wear nail varnish, it's ridiculous. Okay, so I've just got some acrylic paints here. I've got a paler green and a darker green, and I'm just going to put the paint on. I like to make it pretty wet so that it sort of soaks in. And it colours but it doesn't cover, because these have got quite a lot of texture on here, so you do want them to put the colour in, but you don't necessarily want it to cover up the actual, you don't want a layer of paint on the surface. So I'm just going to paint the lighter colour on. I'm not being too precious about it, I'm just putting some on. Put my brush there, a smaller brush. Just get some green, and I'm just going to go around the edges with that. Try not to get it on the actual coaster itself. So it really is just a case of painting, which is quite fun. I quite enjoy it. So I'm going to pop some music on, and I will time lapse through this and show you what it looks like when I'm finished. Okay, those are the painted, and they need to dry now because I've just made these leaves really wet again. And once they're dry, I'm going to put some wax over the surface. That will be it, be ready to be packaged. And so I will be back once these are ready. Okay, so it's time to wax this now. I am going to use this. It's a company called Glean Stone Polish and a gloss wax. This is a food safe finish, not that that's going to apply here, but I'm going to apply this with a brush. It's the easiest way to get into all these little areas down here where the leaves are. So I'm just putting some on the brush, and then I'm going to smooth this over the surface, over the leaves, pretty much everywhere. So you just give it a good coat. Excuse me. Make sure everything is covered. Then you're going to let it sit for a little while once you do have it covered, and then take the cloth and buff it off. You can apply multiple coats, but one is actually enough, especially if you're putting it on as thick as I'm at the moment. Okay, that looks pretty good. So as I say, you're going to leave that to soak in a little bit, and then I can remove the excess with the cloth and buff it up. And I've already done that to the other one. Let me just clean this off my hands. I bring that in. Now I like to use or reuse packaging. So this was an old box from I think it had a mould in it. So I've just covered it with some lovely paper, but that's what you can package it up to look like that. And I've printed out a card. Now this is just, it's folded over in 4. I'm just gluing that together now. So it was, decide how big you want one sheet of your card and then times that by 4. And then you can print out your card. And yeah, I think that makes a really nice gift. I've put the crinkle in there, or shred, or whatever you call it. And you can pop a essential oil in there if you want to. Just put the card in so that they know how to deal with it. Do give them a warning not to place anything on a polished surface. That's why we've provided them with a coaster. And also, if you're, like for instance, the wings, the angel wings, you may choose to hang those up in a wardrobe depending on what you're going to put on them. Don't let it come into contact with material either, because it will stain or mark them. So that's the little packaging for that. You can get a box depending on what you've made your present look like, then that's fine. The angel wing is just a card, again similar warning and instructions on how to just sprinkle the stuff on the back, what you can use, and pop some shred in. They will see it underneath there. And then you can put your wings in. The hardest thing is getting all this shred to stay in when you're putting the lid on. And then just pop your lid on. So I hope that's given you some idea of some things that you can make, and I hope you give it a go. People do like personalised gifts. Thanks so much for watching, and I'd just like to say thank you very much also to all of my new subscribers. If you haven't subscribed, please do. I will be putting videos out pretty much every week. Please come back and see what I'm going to make next time. Thanks. Bye.